Hello, welcome to an end of year book tag for 2025. I'm going to take you through different books that I've read this year based on different prompts. I saw this being done on another channel. I will show that here to sort of credit whoever it was I saw it from. I can't remember the name of the channel off the top of my head. And she did it stood up, and I don't usually do stood up content, so I'm going to see how that works for me. Right, the first prompt is the most disappointing book that you read this year. I'm going for Awake by Harold Vertman, and the reason I'm going for this is because I have the second book of his in this sort of trilogy that he's done called Subluna. It's not a series where you have to read every book. You can pick and choose from between the books, but I think I was sent both of these as part of the Republic of Consciousness Book of the Month subscription, which I really love. I love that subscription, but having read Awake, I'm now really not looking forward to Subluna because I really didn't like Awake. So Awake is telling the story of Pliny the Elder through his narrative, through the thoughts and musings of his nephew, and then through, I think, one of his servants who's like trying to write down his works for him. And it's very disjointed, it's very gross, like there's a lot of talk of sort of bodily functions and bodies breaking down. And it didn't really feel like it went anywhere. I didn't feel compelled to read it. It was just a bit, I felt like it was experimental for experimental's sake, and I really wanted to love it because I want to love indie publishers, small presses. I want to love their work and I want to promote their work when I'm talking about books, and that just was not the one for me. Okay, an Underdog book. So my Underdog book is The Blank Wall by Elizabeth Zanksay Holding. This is a sort of crime noir mystery. I wouldn't say mystery because you know what's happened. As the reader, you know what's happened, and you're following the person who's hidden the body as they're trying to get away with what's happened and sort of evade the police, and they get entangled in all of these things. But it was a very sort of domestic noir because we're following the mother who is trying to protect her family from scandal. It is just so well done and written in the 1940s, 50s, I can't remember which one. It was so gripping, and it said so much about intergenerational relationships today, like mother-daughter relationships, mother-son relationships, how the mother is dealing with the fact that she has an absent husband because he is still participating in the war efforts, but also done in such a thriller way, such a compelling way to read. So this is my Underdog. This is published by Persephone Press in the UK, who are looking to republish sort of forgotten classics, particularly by women. They do publish some men, but mostly by women. Okay, prompt number 3 is an overhyped book. So I'm going for The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Now, I had 2 that I've sort of written down, this and A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, because they are so talked about, they are so loved. But this one, I hear nothing but amazing things about The Secret History, and it didn't quite live up to that wow way that everyone talks about it for me. Whereas A Little Life, I think, gets mixed reviews, so I was sceptical going into that, not really knowing whether it was going to be my sort of book or not. But this one just gets such amazing reviews, and I was just a bit like, ooh, it has some pacing issues, like it's doing some great things but it has pacing issues, so The Secret History is my pick for that one. Oh, okay, so the next prompt is a book that surprised you. I'm going for The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin because this surprised me consistently. As we were reading each chapter, I just felt shocked by different revelations that were happening, by different things that were being discovered in this world. I just felt surprised at every turn with this, and I can't wait to read the next book in the series. So this is my book that surprised you. Okay, so the next few are not really the sorts of things that I look out for in books, but the next prompt is favourite couple that you've read in a book. So I've gone through my list and I have found my favourite ones, but what I noticed was that a lot of the time I'm reading couples that aren't likeable, that don't like each other, that aren't really sort of couple goals or anything. So here are my picks. The first one that I read this year where there was a couple that was lovely was Emma by Jane Austen. She writes amazing romances, the sorts of yearning and sort of misinterpreted signals. So Emma and Mr. Knightley is one of my couples. I then had to read for university Hero and Leander by Christopher Marlowe, which is a bit of a almost Romeo and Juliet star-crossed lovers type narrative poem. So Hero and Leander, that was quite nice to read. Very overblown love gestures in that. And then the final one I'm going to say is sort of a secondary couple within A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. There's Harold and Julia, who are the couple who decide to adopt Jude. And I think they're couple goals. I think they're, really lovely. They are just really lovely people in the world. They have good ethics. They work hard. They love people. Like, they are just really lovely people. So Harold and Julia from A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Right, I'm going to hold my notebook for this. So the next one is favourite main character. All the ones that I could think where I really liked the main characters were the children's books that I've read with my kids. So the first one I'm going to say is 9 from The House at the Edge of Magic, which is the first book in a series that is a story in which 9 is somewhat of an Oliver Twist character escaping from someone who is a bit of a sort of child labour, what do you call it? A child thief coordinator. And finds a sort of found family within this house at the edge of magic, and they come together and they solve mysteries and things like that. And in the second one, they are very solidly working together on something. It's lovely. The second one is the 4 characters, Zeke, Daniel, Alicia and Miel from the Chronicle of a Lizard Nobody series. Again, we've read books 1 and 2 this year, and I just really like how some of those characters are like autism coded. It's not expressly said, but a lot of the ways in which they interact with each other feel like they have special educational needs coding to them, and it was really lovely to read those books, and they're so funny and so just fun to read with kids, so I like that one. And then finally Maggotty Skull from the Mallory Vale and Maggotty Skull series. Again, we've read books 1 and 2, how funny, from those series. So those are my favourite main characters. And then the next prompt was also favourite secondary characters. So again, from the House at the Edge of Magic series, the found family that she has, there's a little wizard who looks like a child but talks like an old man. There's a wooden spoon with a Scottish accent. Like, there's some really great secondary characters in those stories. And that was like the main things that I could think of when I was thinking through this thing, because most of the books I read I think have not very likeable characters, and I wouldn't really say that I liked them. I enjoyed reading the books and I liked what the author was doing with those characters, but I wouldn't say I wanted to be like friends with those characters. Oh, I'm gonna have to hold this up still, because the next one is new favourite author. Now, I wouldn't say new favourite author, but what I would say is authors that I definitely want to read from again, and I would really like to read from Mohsin Hamid, who wrote The Reluctant Fundamentalist. I'd like to read more by him. I read Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. Really loved that, so I'd like to read more from Yaa Gyasi. I read a short story by Risal Wataya from the Kanata collection at Strangers Press, and I loved that. That particular story was my absolute favourite. Unfortunately, none of Risa's other work is translated into English yet, or at least that I can access, so I can't yet read anything else by her, but does have works available. Where are you? I read The Keep by Jennifer Egan, and I would really like to read some more from Jennifer Egan because that was brilliant. I'd like to find anything else written by Elizabeth Zhang Holding because The Blank Wall was incredible. And then, funnily enough, even though I didn't really like A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, I think Yanagihara's writing is amazing. So I would like to try some of her other works because she has some shorter works. And I think for me, part of the problem was the length of that. I just felt like it was too much and it wasn't necessary. So I know that she's done some shorter sort of 300, 400 page books, and I'd like to try some more of her writing because her writing is great. Okay. No, don't fall. Okay, so the next prompt is Happiest book, and I couldn't think of any books that I've read that I would consider happy. So I've gone for Heartburn by Nora Ephron, and that's because she put such a comical spin on such a sad moment in her life. So that's what I'm going for, just for the comical timing, the satirical way and the absurd way that other people react to what is happening in this. So this is the happiest book that I read this year. So, most frustrating book that I read this year, I have already gotten rid of. I DNF'd it. It was Glass Books. The Glass Books of the Dream Eaters, which is sort of like a steampunk fantasy book. And the premise was so good. I don't know how to explain the premise, but the premise was just so fantastic. But the execution was so bizarre. We were reading the book from the perspective of 3 characters. Each character would have a chapter that was, like 70 pages long. And then you'd swap to another character's and read another 70 pages. But those segments are like they were a slog. And when I say 70 pages, they were big pages, tiny writing. It was a lot of information that you were getting for each one chapter. And then you'd move on to the next character. And that made it feel so disjointed. Like, I don't mind long chapters. I'm reading Milkman by Anna Burns, and that has really long chapters. But because you're only reading one perspective, it works. It's so disjointed and it takes you out of the story to keep jumping to 3 different people who are in 3 very different locations. Sometimes they're together, but more often than not, they're not together. It was like a 600-700 page book that felt like it was never ending, and I so wanted to know what was going on, but it was a 3-book series and I just couldn't get through that first book. So that was the most frustrating because I was so invested in the story, but I felt so put off by the writing and by how it was structured. Okay, the longest book I read, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. That's the longest book I have accomplished this year. Not really going to say anything else on it. The shortest books, I read the entire 5-book collection from the Kanata series, which are the shortest books. So Strangers Press Press publish these little chapbooks. They are 1 or 2 short stories in a collection, and they do them in sets of 5. I think sometimes there's fewer, but the Kanata collection itself is 5. I don't own any of those books, but they are very short. Those ones that I own are from a different collection, but it's very similar concept. So the shortest one that I read from that was The God of the Word, which was not my favourite from that list. My favourite from that list was Then Why Ask Me to Come. That was magnificent. The next prompt is my favourite covers this year. So some of them are from my Kindle, some of them are not. So the first one is Midnight in Chernobyl. I just love the sort of black and white photography. I do love photography, so I love that cover. The Decameron Project. This has such a nice cover. I love that. I love that styling. And inside, each of the title pages for each story has a similar styling. I just think that's brilliant. Love it. We have The Albatross by Susan Hill. This is a collection of short stories. Love that cover. Okay, so the next 3 I have physically. So we've got The Comfort of Strangers. That is, again, it's a photograph, but a very blurry photograph, and I just love that sort of thing. I love a bit of abstract art. Near Distance by Hannah Stoltenberg. I just love the graphic nature of that. And then The Department of Speculation by Jenny Offill. And then other Kindle ones. Homegoing by Yag Yassi. I love this cover for that book. Okay, so the next prompt is a book you haven't stopped thinking about. One of them is Farzana and the Moon by Matt Wilvan. I didn't actually like this that much in the reading experience. I thought it felt too clunky. I didn't think the writing was particularly brilliant, but the concept I haven't stopped thinking about. The sorts of conversations that were happening, the thematic issues being raised in this, I haven't stopped thinking about, and I feel like I talk about it in every video that I make. And the other one that's similar to this is Tender is the Flesh. When I read this, I felt like it was a bit overdone. I felt like it was a bit in your face, but there are some sections of that book that have stuck with me, and that's one of the first books I read this year, and it is still sticking in my mind. Like the scene, if you've read it, the scene where the sister is going into the cupboard at her dinner party. I cannot stop thinking about that. So those are the 2 books which, funnily enough, at the time that I read them, didn't like them as much as I thought I would, and now I can't stop thinking about them. The Cringiest read. So I think this is going to Awake by Harold Vertman. So this is because of the fact that it talked about sort of certain bodily functions and things in such disgusting ways. Not in a body horror way, although I suppose it kind of is, but just in a way that made me feel quite uncomfortable reading it. So that's going to the Cringiest read. Ooh, unpopular book that you loved. I'm going for, again, The Reluctant Fundamentalist by Mohsin Hamid. This got quite a lot of hate because people seem to think it was too simple, that it was too clearly an allegory, but I really like that about it. Considering it's a short book, I think that works really well as an allegory. So I loved it, even though some people really hated it. Ooh, my lowest rated book on Goodreads, and do I agree with it? This only got a 3.05 rating on Goodreads, and I agree with that. That's a middle of the range rating. So if everyone is rating it 3 stars, which is about what I felt it was worth, then I agree entirely with that review of it, because the writing isn't great, but what it's doing is quite good. So I think it sits at a 3.05 quite well. And then my highest rated on Goodreads is A Book of Art by Grayson Perry. I can't remember the exact title of it, but this is the cover. It's a very beautiful cover. Probably should have put this in my covers one as well. I borrowed this from a friend who said this was her favourite book, and I wanted to read. I like reading my friends' favourite books. I mean, read it, you part read it, but obviously you part sort of digest visually. And this one had a 4.61 rating on Goodreads. Do I think it's worth that? I think art books tend to get higher ratings. I don't really know. I wouldn't have given it, say, a 5 star, but I certainly thought it was good. I'd have given it a 4 star, that one. Okay, next prompt is favourite book quotes. My favourite book quotes have come from this anthology of early modern women's writing, which I've been studying for university. There are some really surprising works in this. I think if you like Jane Austen as a writer, if you like the characters that she creates, the female protagonists, you should read The Letters of Dorothy Osborne. That sort of witty, sarcastic, but funny female protagonist is basically Dorothy Osborne. If you told me that Jane Austen's characters were all inspired by Dorothy Osborne, I'd completely believe you. Her letters are all written to her future husband, William Temple, during a period in which they were not allowed to be married. They had wanted to marry each other, but both their families were against the match, so their letters are full of... I say their letters, we only have her letters to him, but they're full of sometimes yearning, but not necessarily yearning. There's almost a case of she's trying to cast it as friendship over love, but it always sort of pushes over into that next level. They're wonderful to read. But then also the works of Amelia Lanier. I mean, look how much I've highlighted in here. This is is very proto-feminist. She is doing a reading of The Fall of Man from the Garden of Eden through a very feminist perspective. She is criticising the current way that story is read and saying, no, it's not woman's fault, it's not Eve's fault, it's Adam's fault. He's the one to blame. Woman was trying to pass on what she had to the man that she loves. She did not know that this was going to cause them to fall, where Adam knew. Adam was told categorically, do not do this, this is what will happen. And he did it anyway. He did it for the temptation of the woman, where the woman did it just because she wanted the knowledge. She says in it, your fault being greater, why should you disdain our being your equals free from tyranny? You know, she's saying women should be equal to men. We are no more to blame. She talks about how men would not be here without women going through the pain that they do to give birth. You know, they should not forget that women are creators. It's fantastic. And so many of these are so quotable. So fantastic. So yes, my favourite quotes have come from this collection. So book with the most unique concepts. I've got two. I've got Grief is the Thing with Feathers, because of the fact that we're portraying grief through a sort of weird relationship with a crow. Fantastic book. And then I've got I, Vampire by Jodie Scott. This almost went on my most disappointing book, because this started out so well. It was really funny. It's again very absurd. I loved it so much. I was doing underlining and all sorts, and then by the end it had gotten so chaotic and so out of control that it didn't really make any sense. But this one, the concept is, we have a vampire who, when she's about 700 years old, encounters Virginia Woolf. But Virginia Woolf is actually an alien. This is 1980s America, and this alien has come, and she starts this relationship with Virginia Woolf / alien. And then the aliens basically tell her that humanity is a bit of an alien experiment, but the experiment is going wrong, and they now have to fix it by selling sperm kits to women so that they can choose who they procreate with, and they want to procreate with the best of humanity. So celebrities and people at the top of their fields, you know, pro footballers, actors, and people who run large companies. I imagine Jeff Bezos would be getting one of these sperm kits. But yes, that was the sort of concept, and it is such a bizarre concept to have the aliens and the vampires and all of this going on. And as I said, the first bit was fantastic, but then it sort of petered out, so I don't really recommend it because it went a bit weird, but there it is. And then book that I want to reread, there's quite a few on this list. I'm going to say The Secret History, because when I was doing my little reading blog where I talked about reading this, I did say it'd be interesting to reread this at some point and really critically engage with what's happening in those moments when the pacing falls off. When I feel like the pacing makes this not a great read, I would like to reread this and really look at those moments. But yeah, thank you for joining me on this. And if you decide to do it because you've watched this one, please tag me in it and let me know. That'd be amazing. Thank you.